Hey now, welcome to another edition of Refreshing Thoughts. I'm Chris Fresh, and I've come back a little sooner than expected because my podcasts, Geek Dudes, and Hey, it's the podcast that you may know me from, taking a bit of a break, and I thought I'd push out a few extra refreshing thoughts while I've got some time. I'm on leave at the moment, and so I thought I'm going to put out this episode, and I'm going to put out a review of Superman, which I am seeing with Lockie Hicks and my son Hunter in just 2 days' time. And can't wait. I just read a prequel book, like a junior sort of novel. I was only like 120 or 30 pages. But I found it set a tone for the movie that had me really excited. And if the movie captures the feel of what this book was, I think we're going to walk away pretty happy. Superhero movies have had a tendency to sort of be a little dreary and real worldy and to sometimes to great effect and sometimes to not great effect. And this felt very Superman-y, very comic booky. And it's got me excited. I am excited for Superman. I want it to succeed. I want DC to have a win. Not that I'm anti-Marvel. I'm not anti-Marvel by any means. I'll be there to see Fantastic Four as well. I just would love to see both universes up and running and being really successful. But what I thought I would do with this is I have a Patreon set up with the blessing of Mitch and Jonesy, which is patreon.com/C/refreshing thoughts podcast/membership, where for $5 Australian a month, you can subscribe and help support the channel. It helps pay hosting fees with Transistor and with StreamYard, which StreamYard is obscenely expensive. And we've had a few Patreons sign up, which I'm greatly appreciative of. And I thought I would put it out to them. If any of them had questions, that they could ask me whatever they wanted. I'm a pretty open book about life. I work in professional wrestling. I love a lot of different things, and I wasn't sure if anybody was going to respond. It's always a risk when you do that people don't get around to it or can't be bothered typing, and I was just going to ramble if that was the case. But I did get a few questions. Before I get to them, it would be remiss of me not to mention my awesome intro theme, which is Heads Are Gonna Roll big band version by The Shine, and you can find them at The Shine Worldwide, where you can find all good rock and roll. And I'm greatly appreciative to Jules and Mino and PG3 and the boys for giving me that song because it helps set the tone of fun for the show. But yeah, as I was saying, our Patreons, I was blown away that anybody joined. I had thought having a Patreon for Geek Dudes and Hey, it's a podcast for the longest time. I felt I didn't want to owe anybody anything. And I've seen other people set up Patreons and put out lofty promises. There are some Patreons out there that they're just like, you want to support the show? Thank you. And we're going to continue to do our show, which is sort of the model I've taken. And there are others that are going, I'll send you stickers, I'll do this and that. And then they don't deliver on it, or I'll give you bonus episodes, I'll do this and do that. And they don't deliver on it. And if I was giving my money, I'd feel like I was sort of lied to a little bit or ripped off. And I certainly don't want to do that. My approach to podcasting for almost 20 years now, because whenever I used to do a show about professional wrestling, we were on AM radio here in Melbourne and decided that there was a wrestling website at the time. Could they host a digital version of the radio show on the website, which I guess is very early podcasting? And then sort of Jonesy came on board and helped around that time. I guess I've known Jonesy 19 years now, and sort of a show called the DCW Variety Hour was born. Very controversial. I was very Howard Stern pilled at the time and brought that and mixed it in with professional wrestling and stuff, and it caused a lot of drama. And you know, I'm a far more reserved and mature person for the most part, but perhaps me in my 20s, um, I could be a handful. I can still be a handful, but certainly back then, and with Demirov and Walker and Duck Tie, like these guys, we did this show for years. Gambino would come on and eventually, and yeah, so I guess, I've been at this, well, if you count radio, I've been at this for over 20 years. But yeah, I had resisted the idea of a Patreon, but listeners had always said, if you did it, we would support you. And, I've not, Mitch and Jonesy travel a long way to accommodate me here because I have special needs children and everything. So they travel to me to record. I've always liked the environment of recording together, which is what makes this so different. And this refreshing thoughts has been a personal challenge for me, to play around with the format. I've still got some big ideas that I'd like to do where they're special episodes. There's a Batman 89 episode with Julian James that I'm dying to do. And there's an episode with Dirty Uncle Mitch that I'm dying to do about the history of being a collector and what it was like in Melbourne and Australia at a time when I was younger, because he's a little bit older than me. Jules is a couple of years older than me, getting their perspective, bringing our perspectives together. I'm going to work with projects. It's not just going to be me throwing together an episode each and every week, although I'll be doing that too. But I've been pushing myself to record and get in the rhythm, because what do I say? I can't think, I'm not good with this, on how long it takes to form a habit, and I've been wanting to form this habit. There are people out there that are far better at it than me. They do their vlogs at the toy fairs, they do their reviews, they do everything. And I'm probably a little gorilla about how I do things. I'm learning as I go as a 46-year-old man. But I am having fun with it. And I've had a lot of support from my wife. Jules was giving me great words of encouragement the other day. And Ben Sachs from Toy Power, he's amazing. He always shoots me a message after the show encouraging me, and like there's some great listeners and stuff as well. Everybody's support has been greatly appreciated, because I'm taking a lot of your time. If you listen to Geek Dudes and Hey It's the podcast, and now Refreshing Thoughts, that's a lot of me. And then if you go to the wrestling shows and stuff, there's even more of me. So I apologize for so much me. And there's a lot of great shows out there. And a lot of you listen to this audio only, and I completely understand, because YouTube just emailed me saying that they're upping their price of the ad-free version, and we're on a family plan because Connor, who's over there at the moment, he's watching. I'm gonna get a sneaky view of Connor. He's just on his iPad. All he does is watch his iPad. Southern Hunter does the same thing. Steph's on her phone; she doesn't really use her iPad. But everybody watches YouTube. And the ads are really intrusive. And I go, once you go ad free, you can't go back. But I can understand people not wanting to spend the money on it as well. It's really expensive. So yeah, it's not lost on me. Everybody that has signed up to be a Patreon or subscribe to the channel, congratulations to Crackerjack, Australian professional wrestling legend, for being subscriber 69. Last time I checked on the channel, let's do a live check. We are up to 71 subscribers. I would love to get to 100 by the end of the year. I don't know that I will, but that is my goal. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, even if you don't think you're going to watch it, give me the subscribe. It just helps the channel grow. And of course, sharing it and stuff does as well. I'm probably doing a lot of preamble because this isn't a show proper. It's a bit of a bonus. There's going to be a couple of episodes this week, and you'll get to them when you get to them. But I threw out to the patrons, did they have any questions of me? And Brett from Thoughtlessly Casual Gaming podcast and Thoughtlessly Thinking. You've heard me mention Brett before. Great supporter, great guy, lovely. If you're ever down in Geelong Way, keep an eye out for that big, beautiful beard of his. Brett asked me what was my favorite toy as a kid, and that got me thinking. Like, I think as a kid, I didn't really have one specific toy that was my favorite toy. I had different eras where certain things grabbed my attention more. There was certainly, a He-Man era. There was a real Ghostbusters era. There was a Batman era. There was a wrestling era, Mask. But I was one of those kids, Machine Men. I loved GoBots. Machine Men. Couldn't really afford Transformers. I was always pretty envious of what other kids had. I was definitely one of those kids that was like, oh, people would have these big Christmases and stuff, and some kids would get one or two really cool gifts and stuff, and that's what I had. I'd get a lot of crappy little gifts, but it didn't matter because it felt big to me. But I'd usually get a main event gift. But some kids would get like multiple Transformers and He-Man figures and G.I. Joes and stuff and Thundercats and stuff, and you'd go, that's incredible. But I I had a point in time where the McDonald's Happy Meal Muppet Babies were my favorite toys, and I was playing with them a lot. Like, I was big on imagination. So I had I know it sounds weird, but I had an LJN junkyard dog, and I had a vintage Snaggletooth and stuff, and I used to pretend that Snaggletooth was piloting the junkyard dog like it was almost like a mech or a Voltron style. Probably a word for it, and you're all screaming at me. And I just make up these different scenarios. And I know to some that would be sacrilegious to be mixing the toy lines and crossing the streams. But like when I was by myself and stuff, that's what I would do a lot. I would play Ghostbusters or go on adventure and stuff, but I more have memories of doing that with a friend. Um, this was more, I just distinctively remember doing this. I'd be playing with them in the bath. I'd play I'd play with them all the time. But you know, I think for me, if I think back to childhood, the big three toy lines, it's hard for me to say favorite toy. Big three toy lines for me were Masters of the Universe, then Kenner's Real Ghostbusters, then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They probably closed it out. There were things in between that grabbed my attention. I'd get on Thundercat here, the Police Academy figures by Kenner. I loved, wrestling figures were there, but I guess from a kid's perspective, Turtles, Kenner's Real Ghostbusters, and Masters of the Universe were the big three. You can tell by my collection now, with the exception not mentioning professional wrestling there, but that shaped who I was as a kid and sort of what I collected, Batmania, Cortisol. Um, there was a lot, but I know, Brett, that's not really giving you the answer of one particular toy. I guess, okay, what toy did I hang on to that traveled with me forever? My OG Turtles did. And Battle Armor He-Man. That was my He-Man. I guess it was the He-Man on the shelf at the time. So, Battle Armor He-Man was probably my favorite childhood toy. To me, he is iconic. And yeah, I held him dearly. So I guess I was able to answer Brett's question. I spoke of him earlier. He's a great supporter of the show. He's from the Toy Power podcast, which is a far better toy podcast and podcast in general than anything I do. No offense, Dirty Uncle Mitch and Jersey. They know. Um, but Shredder 1982, Ben Sachs, one of my favorite human beings on earth, said to me regarding your question on Patreon regarding refreshing thoughts. If you suddenly won $5,000 and you had the opportunity to spend that money on a single toy line that you do not currently collect or own anything from, what would you get? Space is not a concern either in this scenario. All the best, mate. Keep up the great work. As I said, Saxy, always showing love and support, which I greatly appreciate. That's an interesting question. Um, and like two things jumped out at me. One, because I just missed the deal of a lifetime on Facebook Marketplace, and it was like, oh, bummer. Let me tell you what I missed out on. So let's see if the listing is still there. I missed it. So for $50 pickup, I missed out on the following Robotech items. I missed out on the Veritech Fighter and the 3.75-inch Rick Hunter, a Bioroid hovercraft, a 6-inch Dolza figure, a 6-inch Miria Harina Sterling figure, a Zor Prime 3.75 figure, a Bioroid Terminator 3.75 figure, and a Radar X Destroyed figure. $50 cash on pickup in Newport, which is the other side of Melbourne. And I would have happily driven to go pick that up. I love the Veritech Fighter, I guess Jetfire is sort of the design for it. Robotech, I didn't watch much of the cartoon. I did have a not Rick Hunter, I had Roy, the blue pilot. I just had one figure. I remember visiting my sister-in-law. She worked at a surf shop in Sunshine, a suburb in Melbourne, and there was a toy world right near there, and in the 80s. And she said, you can get one figure, and there was one on clearance. And I grabbed this, and I thought it was really cool. And Robotech's always been something that has interested me. So you could probably get a nice Robotech collection for that. The other thing that leapt to mind are some toys that I actually had as a kid, but I no longer have anything of at the moment. And that is Cops and Crooks, or Cops as I called it at the time. I always thought that line was really cool. Now, Saxy's put parameters on there. If I had $5,000, I'm straight away, and I could just spend on whatever I wanted. I really want the Ghost Buggy from Filmation's Ghostbusters. I would love that toy. But I own toys from that line, so that is disqualified. I will play by the rules. So I guess what comes to mind quickly is Cops and Crooks or Robotech. Because part of my collecting sort of style is I have a little bit of everything. And in answering Ben's questions, I didn't want to cheat and go, well, I don't have, you know, um, just say I didn't have any Joy Toys Ninja Turtles, and I go, I want to collect for Joy Toy Ninja Turtles and stuff. Yeah, but I've got Ninja Turtles. I've tried going for an actual line that's not represented here at all by any company, you know, and Cops and Crooks and Robotech are the two that come to mind, particularly Robotech, because I just miss that deal. Oh, like every time, like Rick Hunter in the jet, I'd just be happy with that to have on display in my collection. Obviously, I'd prefer to take that $5,000 and like get a mail away Hasbro Hogan or a vintage Scareglow or a Master of the Universe Classics Red Granomir. But that's not the way that they're not the rules that we're playing by, and I will respect the Sachs rules. And once again, like Brett, I'm not really nailing down Cops and Crooks or Robotech. Cops and Crooks or Robotech. the the Jet and Rick Hunter alone, I think I'd prefer to have that on display over Cops and Crooks. But as an overall line, Cops and Crooks over the rest of Robotech. That I think because I just missed out on the deal, I'm gonna say Robotech, but maybe Cops and Crooks. I'm not answering. I know Ben. I apologize, Big Saxy. Can't believe she's trying to take credit for nicknames. That's a whole nother discussion. I know that was a bit of a cop out answer. And I apologize for that. But yeah, it was hard. It's hard to go like, what don't I have anything from that I sort of always wished I correct? Like, I've got a Toxie. I've even got a Power Rangers figure there. I'm trying to go for something I don't have a representation of. And you'd go, well, why do you have a Power Ranger in your collection when, notoriously I rag on the Power Rangers. And the reason that is I still love what they represent to pop culture, if that makes sense. And I have a very fond memory of not really collecting toys, and my nephew one Christmas really wanting, all right, Tommy, the Green Ranger, and going to Daimaru in Melbourne, which was a Japanese department store and stuff, and hunting and finding the Green Ranger for him for Christmas. I took great satisfaction when I no longer was really getting stuff as a teenager for Christmas, a big thing of trying to make Christmas magical for my nephews. And what's funny with that is with my own money, like I got them a Nintendo 64, I got my nephew Frankie a Super Nintendo and stuff, and they have no memory of it was me that gave it to them. They just remember getting it, and it could have been Santa for all they know, or mum and dad and stuff. And it's like, it was me. Give me the credit. What is this? But yeah, I think that's I think they're the two lines that stand out to me instantly. Brian Amore, Patreon said, "Hey, Fresh, enjoy the break. I hope it's all good." A few questions. As a kid, I love this question. Were I an Arnold guy, a Stallone guy, or a JCBD guy? And Ryan, I'm going to put it to you that I'm going to take your question and split it because I think it's Arnie or Stallone, and it's Jean Claude Van Damme or Steven Seagal. And I have a definitive answer on one side, and I've gone back and forth on the other. But I think I know where I land now. I was an Arnie guy over Stallone every day of the week. Terminator 2 alone makes me an Arnie guy. Arnold, Arnold, sure had some clunkers and stuff, but he is iconic. Do I love Demolition Man? Yes. Do I like the Rocky movies, particularly Rocky 3? Yes. Clubber Lang rules. You know, I certainly don't dislike Stallone. You know what I mean? But Arnold is iconic. Now, the Ninja Turtles, me doing martial arts into anything martial arts as a kid, like I was a big Bruce Lee mark. As a kid, my dad, who I have a very complicated relationship with, was a black belt in jiu-jitsu before anybody knew what jiu-jitsu was. Like obviously when the Gracies made their mark in mixed martial arts in the early to mid 90s. They brought jiu-jitsu to the forefront. But my dad trained in it in the military, and I always had an appreciation of martial arts. I did martial arts for a few years. Dad trained with me at home a little bit. Not great, but where kids sort of didn't understand, like everything was punch and kick, punch and kick. Dad was teaching me guillotines and chokes and takedowns and everything like that. And I was always interested in martial arts. So, I wasn't so much into your Michael Dudikoff's American Ninjas, but I'd hire all the martial arts movies and kickboxing videos that you could get at the store at the time. I'd buy Black Belt magazine. That would probably, for some of you, mean something. To others, mean nothing. Stan the Man Longanides was an Australian kickboxer, and I was in awe of him at the time. And Van Damme and Steven Seagal were the two big dogs, and I love Seagal. I still love Seagal now. I don't love who Steven Seagal is now, but going back and watching his movies and how terrible he is and how serious he takes himself, I am infinitely charmed by. Same goes for Van Damme. But I think if I was to go back and you're going kickboxer, blood sport, no retreat, no surrender, time cop, sudden death, double impact. There's a quote from Double Impact that I can't use anymore because it's very inappropriate, but it used to make me giggle. All those movies, Van Damme, I give the edge, but Above the Law, Out for Justice, Under Siege on a Train. I I enjoyed Seagal. I did. I thought Steven Seagal was cool. That explains, apart from this face and the fact I was chubby and had weird, terrible hairstyles all the time and terrible fashion sense and was raised by my father and everything. Aside from all those reasons, me thinking Steven Seagal was cool is yet another reason why no female would pay any attention to me at all. And I like professional wrestling. Oh, it's a miracle I'm married now. Somebody traveled the world for this. But yeah, I it makes me want to go back and revisit all of their movies. It's terrible. I just watched Batman and Robin with Dirty Uncle Mitch. It's a terrible movie, but goddamn Arnold gives it his all. And I don't want the blacklight Mr. Freeze that they brought out that looks more like Bill Hader. Like, I don't know why they changed the face sculpt because the Build-A-Figure Mr. Freeze that Todd did looked really cool. I'd love to get that figure. I'm going to keep an eye out. That line sort of from Batman and Robin came and went real quick. But yeah, I have the Batman and Robin Batmobile, the Todd Batmobile, and the Clune Dog Batman. But the movie's terrible. But yeah, Arnold, like, how can you, like, not so much Total Recall for me, but True Lies is a great movie. Twins is amazing. Kindergarten Cop with the dude from Two Moon Junction, very erotic movie. Like, yeah, I Arnold, Van Damme. Yeah. I hate Van Damme's guile though with a passion. That Street Fighter movie sucks. Raul Julia is the only good thing about it. The day M. Bison came to your I can't remember the exact quote, but it's so good. And it's amazing when you think Raul Julia was passing away. I've been playing Street Fighter 2, the new challenges, Turbo, against my son Hunter. He challenged me, and he's a spammer, and it drives me crazy. And so I started spamming him with DJ and Bison, and I was doing low sweeping kicks, and I whipped him a million times, just spamming him and spamming him. It's like a little version of me versus a big version of me, just both being shitheads. And but it was going to turn nasty. Like, he was ripping off clothing in anger, like he's like the Incredible Hulk. And it was like, I got to give him the last round. Well, that's what my story. I let him win the last round, and he got to walk away the champion. But playing it was annoying because I was just going to collect for Jada Toys original, 8 and 4, the villains and the good guys. But now I think I have to get the new challenges. I mean, not expensive, but Space Danger on my Street Fighter shelf. Do I expand it to 2 shells? It's very annoying, but I think I have to get the new challenges as well. It was such a big deal when the new challenges came out. Ryan also ask me a non-toy question and or movie culture, a music question. Um, Look, yes, I do like the Smashing Pumpkins music, but Billy Corgan is a bit of a knob, he just is. And somehow Billy Corgan and I have morphed into each other in a love of professional wrestling. We're both complete gimmicks and both bald. Although he's way more successful than I am. Knowing you're a big GNR guy, I'm Guns N' Roses, keen to hear your thoughts on the final Sabbath show. Was it a fitting send off for Ozzy or was it a Sharon cash in? Um, that's an interesting one. I think my answer to that is a little bit of both. I think I don't really like Sharon, um, and never have. She'll hear this. She'll actually come after me. But I do think it was nice to see so many big artists paying tribute to Ozzy and Ozzy getting that one last Sabbath performance. And yes, it was hard to see him sitting in the chair and stuff. But I do think as a performer, as an artist, being able to be out there in front of the masses and doing it one more time, it's not like they had him on strings like a puppet and Ozzy did still seem with it and able to do enough, and seeing him get beloved and respect is that's the moment, it brought artists together. You saw Axl Rose talking to James Hetfield and being both a Metallica and Guns N' Roses fan, the idea that those two today in their older years put everything aside and just have a chat and they're there for Ozzy. Axel said he met Ozzy for the first time, which is mind blowing. But to see all these artists and everybody come together and pay tribute to pioneers in a genre was really cool. Sharon Osbourne, like shaming and threatening to name artists that wanted to be paid for the gig and stuff like that, uh, felt a little gross. Like, just let it go. It's about Aussie. It's not about the fact that these guys didn't get paid. You know, and she didn't do it in a way that's putting over the people that did do it for free. It's more shaming those that did. I know there's talk. Was it possibly Iron Maiden? I can't imagine her and Maiden working together. I did see Wolfgang Van Halen say they couldn't do it anymore, and it's like leave poor Wolfie alone. If it was they couldn't afford to do the gig because it wouldn't have been cheap. I don't know whether the festival paid for the band's trans and stuff like that, or did these guys all fly themselves in and do it for free? I'm not sure sort of what the deal was, but that's where Sharon Osbourne makes it feel gross. But it was nice to see a loving tribute for Ozzy Osbourne. And one last thing, he's going to rip off. I've been caught stealing. I'd play that if I wasn't going to get copyright struck by other podcasts. Ripping off Dave's Video Graveyard here. You should go check out Dave's Video Graveyard. Davey and Casey are getting to a new episode at some point. No, they know I love them. Recast the reboot. Rebooting Hey Hey It's Saturday. For those that maybe international listeners don't know, I do a podcast called Hey Hey It's the Podcast, where I recap classic episodes of the iconic television show Hey Hey It's Saturday, which was a variety show. It was an early morning kids show that became a variety show on a Saturday night that had every big artist that you could ever imagine on it. It was very iconic in Australia up until 1999. Asking me to recast a rebooting Hey Hey It's Saturday. Who plays the crew? Daryl Summers, Red Simons, Willie, Wilbur Wilde, Lavinia Nixon, John Blackman, etc., etc. All right, so I was thinking about this, and some of you will understand this reference depending on your kids' ages, and some of you won't. But if we're going to go from the idea of somebody that hosted a kids show next to a puppet and now has a hosting role and I think could be capable of hosting, and some of you aren't going to know this at all, Google it, is Jimmy Giggle and Hoot. So on Channel 2, the ABC here in Australia in the mornings, or during all day, I think on ABC for Kids, they had Giggle and Hoot. And there was a guy, Jimmy Giggle, and he had an owl puppet next to him. And they did in between bits introduce the cartoons and kids shows. And I think Jimmy Giggle, I don't know his actual surname, um, he, the mums all loved him. I think he could be a good host. And I think he could do quite well in being the host. A guitarist that has personality, like you can't really, it's hard to replace Red because of Red faces. But, you know, a guitarist leading a house band, I think would be really cool, would be Dave Gleason of the Screaming Jets. I can't, like, apart from Kirk from In Excess replacing Willie, I'd just bring Wilbur Wild back. I think Willie's he's still out there touring and everything, and is still with it and stuff. And I would bring Willie back. I don't know, like it's something Red would particularly want to do. So I think I'd have to find somebody else to be the bad judge on Red Faces, and I would never choose Kyle Sandilands. Now, unfortunately, I find him very funny. He's done himself a disservice with some silly comments this year that he sort of didn't need to do. But I thought in the John Blackman role, my mind instantly went to Marty Sheargold. Now, I know that's problematic to say now, but you know, Marty is so dry and quick-witted and stuff. I think him in the booth would be great. And then I'd bring him down from the booth and I'd have him as the Red Faces mean judge. Because Marty's just got a biting wit about him that I think would be very funny. In the Lavinia slash Jo Beth Taylor sort of role, see, I'm kind of out of touch a little bit on modern pop culture too. You know, I guess for Jackie McDonald role, of who instantly would come to mind. Like nobody is leaping out to me. I might have to come back to this one. And he's probably getting a bit too old to do it now. But how awesome would it be to have Jamie Dunn and Agro in the Dickie Knee role? And just the chaos of what that would do. But yeah, it's tricky. Like, who would I have in the Jo Beth Lavinia role? I sort of want to go young because that was their sort of role, and I'm an old man now. So I'm sort of out of touch on who's around. You know, Jo Beth could sing. Um, you know, that was sort of how she got discovered, and she was hosting Australia's funniest home videos and stuff as well. Lavinia's still around. Lavinia could still do it now. Yeah, I'm not 100%, I'm not 100% sure on the female co-host. Um, like there are plenty of capable people. It's just hard to imagine that role in today's modern age because we're trying to sort of put a modern spin on it. But yeah, I do like that question. And go check out Dave's Video Graveyard and go check out Hey Hey, it's a podcast here. Is Talk About Hey It's Saturday if you want to know sort of what I'm talking about. And then finally, Mickey A, he's amazing, like really encouraging supporter of the channel. I greatly appreciate him. He said, I love Ryan's questions. What are your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings movies? Are there any book series you read as a teen or authors you enjoyed other than comics? Thanks for the great content, and I hope your trip is good. Thank you, mate. So do I. The Lord of the Rings movies, I enjoyed as I was watching them. I did not like the Hobbit movie, movies. It should be one movie. Um, but I don't feel a great desire to go back and watch them because they're so long. A joke in our household at the moment is run times. And, Jesse keeps ragging on me, going, "Well, there's your hour and a half. I'm sure you're going to watch it." And I'm like, "Yes." Everything goes so long at the moment. Like, I remember a 2 hour was an epic. And the idea of movies going 3 hours and stuff, it kills me. Like, I just finally got Jesse to watch The Cable Guy. Still love that movie. Cable Guy. It didn't kill Jim Carrey's career. It's a fantastic movie. I love it. It's very quotable. Radical Rewind should consider it, but I don't think they'd get people to go. But the Lord of the Rings movies I thought were cool. I thought the characters were great. I'm just not in the lore. Um, and I'm just, I respect where they are. I do enjoy the Clerks 2 bit about there's only one trilogy, and that is the Star Wars trilogy, the original Star Wars trilogy, and the debate over Lord of the Rings and how Randall's going. All they do is walk in that movie. That always gave me a laugh. I think the movies are cool. I hear the Amazon series really found its voice in episode 43 or whatever they say. But yeah, I don't know. They're cool. I didn't collect all the toys. I had a friend that was right into it and collected, like, Toy Biz did some really cool toys. I always thought Treebeard were cool, like the trees were cool. But yeah, it's not my pop culture thing to go to. If you noticed in Saxy's question, I certainly didn't say Lord of the Rings, and I do not own anything from Lord of the Rings. Books that I read. So I'm ashamed to say that I wasn't a huge reader um, as a young guy in terms of books. I read magazines nonstop, video game magazines like Hyper Magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly, Mean Machine Sega, GameStar, Megazone, and wrestling magazines, WWF Magazine, Raw Magazine, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Inside Wrestling, Wrestle America, WCW magazine. I read magazines and then I reread those magazines over and over and over, all the while missing out on amazing stories with books. I did enjoy The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a young guy. I always used to joke that my favorite book was The Pokey Little Puppy, which is a little golden book. But if it wasn't tied to a movie or like a movie adaptation or something like that, I didn't really read it. Like the Thrawn trilogy, I didn't actually read until the early 2000s. I wasn't into it at the time. I probably read Shadows of the Empire at the time because I was all in, baby, on this new Star Wars lore that was coming out, this video game that had a soundtrack and toy line and Chewie with a bad haircut and everything. But yeah, in terms of books other than comics, comics and magazines sort of were my books. Um, and I can remember uh, my English teacher in year 8 actually saying to Dad that I don't read enough, and Dad said that all he does is read, and she goes, "Yeah, what he reads, it's garbage," and she's right. And the funny thing is, I did literature in VCE in years 11 and 12, and in the famous story of they tried directing you towards classes, and in end of year 9, heading into year 10, when we could do elective classes. Mr. O'Leary, um, go screw yourself, Mr. O'Leary. Hopefully he's passed. He did zing me pretty good because I was a smart ass kid in school, and he said, we had to write down what we wanted to be so they could guide us on what classes to select. And I wrote journalist. And he just very dryly just looked at me and said, "Journalist." you might want to learn how to spell it first. And it was such a good burn on me. I give credit where credit's due. Um, but yeah, fuck that guy. But yeah, it so I read of Mice of Men. And I thought that book was pretty good. And you have to have read or Mice and Men to understand the reference. But it's about this big guy Lenny, and he accidentally kills a kid. He's big and he pets things and accidentally breaks them because he doesn't know his own strength and everything like that. And there was this giant wrestler that wrestled his iron horse, and Julian James and I were calling a match, and he had a long singlet on, and on his side of his trunks it said Iron Horse, and the singlet was covering the eye, so it said Ron Horse. And we're giggling and we're referring to him as Big Ron Horse. I don't think he found it funny at all. I think that guy actually hates me. Everybody loves Jules. Like, Jules can say what he wants and gets away with it. But if it came from me, it came biting for some reason. It still does. There's something inherently dislikable about me. And so I came up with this storyline that only Crackerjack, I think, thinks is a good idea. And even then, I'm not sure he thinks it's a good idea. He just chuckled because he knew the reference of Mice and Ron. And I had the idea that Ron would come out. His name's not even Ron, but he'd come out and he'd be slapping the hands of the fans as he walks around ringside, as wrestlers do. And he accidentally kills a kid as he's slapping her hands. And he's like, "Oh no, not again!" And then the townspeople come after Ron and they're chasing him out and stuff. And I thought it was funny. Nobody else did, and so goes much of my life, isn't it? Really. Some people think I'm a creative genius. Some people think I'm an asshole and an idiot, and I'm probably a little of everything. But thank you to everybody who sent questions in and took the time to ask me something. I really appreciate it. You can support me on the Patreon. You too could ask me questions. And if you want to ask me professional wrestling questions, I would have answered them. At patreon.com/C/refreshing thoughts podcast /membership for $5 Australian a month. What a bargain. You can help support this idiot and his friends, Mitch and Jonesy. We do Geek Dudes. We do Hey, it's a podcast, and now Refreshing Thoughts. So I appreciate everybody that has shown their support. And even if you can't financially support, just, sharing the show on social media, giving it a subscribe, giving it a like. I appreciate it all. It all helps grow the show. I hope you had fun listening to this. It's been fun recording it. What do you think, Connor? Was it fun? Yeah. Connor says it was fun. Hope you got something out of it. And I'll speak to you on the other side of Superman. I can't wait. Please, DC, please, James Gunn, please get it right. I'll speak to you in a little while.